You could just sell your condo and pay off Luke's debt, my dad said casually, as if he was talking about lending someone a cup of sugar. No, I replied. That's it. One word. I didn't argue or explain. I just said no. 8 months later, they tried to sue me. Let me rewind a bit, because this wasn't just about money. I'm Elle, 31 now, and I've always been the designated adult in my family. Ever since I was a kid, I played the role of the fixer, the peacemaker, the dependable one. Meanwhile, my younger brother Luke, who's 29, has coasted through life like he was born on a yacht powered by other people's sacrifices. Growing up, it was like living in 2 separate households under one roof. I still remember my 11th birthday. My parents canceled my tiny party last minute because Luke had a karate belt test. No explanation, no apology. I spent the day watching him pose for pictures in a sweaty GI, while my birthday cake stayed untouched in the fridge. When I turned 16, all I wanted was driving lessons. My parents said it wasn't in the budget. 3 months later, Luke got a shiny pre-owned car to practice with early for his future 16th. Make it make sense. College? I juggled 3 part-time jobs, maintained a full scholarship, and lived off instant noodles in a dorm. I shared with 2 strangers and a mouse named Henry. Luke, on the other hand, bounced around 4 universities like he was touring colleges for fun. He changed majors more often than outfits, racked up a mountain of student loans, which, spoiler alert, he never paid and still somehow graduated with a business degree and a trail of Instagram-worthy vacations. Despite everything, I made a life, got into digital marketing straight out of school, clawed my way up to senior project lead, and saved like a maniac. I lived with roommates, worked freelance on weekends, and put every spare cent into a down payment. 3 years ago, I finally bought a cozy 1-bedroom condo. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. Paid off in full, no mortgage, no debt, just mine. And still, every month like clockwork, I sent my parents $1,000 to help with bills, even though Dad was still working, and somehow always had money to float Luke's startups. Let me list those ventures real quick. A vegan food truck that never passed inspection, a dating app for introverts, and most recently, some crypto coin he tried to mint that tanked faster than a stone in the ocean. But Luke still drove a Tesla, still wore designer watches, still lived in a high-rise that cost more than my entire salary. The only person in the whole family who ever treated me like I mattered was Aunt June, my mom's older sister. She sent me handwritten birthday cards, remembered my job promotions, and never once asked me to pay off someone else's mess. Then came the text that changed everything. Dinner at ours Sunday night. For your birthday? Just us. Please come, Mom. It was weird. They usually forgot my birthday altogether. One time, I got a happy belated text 5 days late with the wrong age in it. But this? A whole dinner? For me? Like a fool, I actually got excited. Bought a new dress. Did my hair. Showed up 5 minutes early. Big mistake. The moment I walked in, I knew something was off. 1 cake from the grocery store. No candles, no Luke. My parents were smiling too wide. The whole night felt staged. After a stiff dinner and weird small talk, my dad leaned back, cleared his throat, and launched into what I now call his Shark Tank pitch voice. Elle, we're so proud of you, he started. You've always been the responsible one, the one we could count on. And now, well, we need your help. Cue the slide deck of disappointment. Luke had, once again, gotten in over his head. This time, he owed over $180,000 to private investors for a real estate venture that turned out to be 2 Airbnbs in foreclosure and 1 sketchy duplex in a flood zone. The ask? Sell my condo to bail him out. It's appreciated so much, my mom said brightly. You could even get something smaller with the leftover money. I sat there, stunned, my fork frozen midair. They were asking me to sell the one thing I'd worked my whole adult life for, so Luke could continue pretending. He was some business prodigy instead of a grown man who couldn't even file his own taxes. What about his car? His condo? His Rolex? I asked. Mom waved it off. Those aren't worth enough. And Luke needs to keep up appearances. He's building something important. That was when I laughed. Not out of humor, more like disbelief. I laughed because the audacity was surreal. No, I said. Calm, clear, final. They looked at me like I'd just slapped them. You're being selfish, Dad said. After everything we've done for you, I looked at him, really looked. Done for me? I supported you. I paid for your bills. I sent you money every month while you funded Luke's failures. You've never helped me. If you don't help your brother, Mom said coldly, you're no longer welcome in this family. I nodded slowly. Then I guess I'm not family anymore. I stood up, grabbed my purse, and walked out of that house like it was on fire. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely get the car key in the ignition. I sat there in the driveway, crying silently, until I could call Aunt June. She picked up on the second ring. They showed you who they are, she said. Now it's time to decide who you are. That night, something inside me snapped. Not in a breakdown way, in a breakthrough way. I was done. Done being the safety net, done being the bank, done being the daughter who didn't matter unless I was needed for damage control. They had finally pushed me too far, and I was going to push back. The next morning, I turned off the auto transfer to my parents. Just like that, $1,000 a month stopped bleeding from my account. I stared at the screen longer than necessary. I guess I expected to feel guilt, but all I felt was silence. The kind of silence that comes after you stop screaming inside. That money? It was going to me now. Retirement fund, travel fund, peace of mind fund. I had spent years padding their lives while emptying mine. That ended today. Step 2, blocked. Phone, email, social. Every channel my parents and Luke could use to weasel their way back and gone. No more just checking in texts that ended in subtle guilt trips. No more family dinners that turned into finance pitches. No more digital doorways into my mental space. Step 3 was trickier. I reached out to Rachel, a sharp, no-nonsense attorney who'd helped a coworker through a messy divorce. When I told her what had happened, she didn't blink. First thing, let's get your assets protected, she said. We'll draft a cease and desist letter and get ahead of anything they might try. I hadn't even thought that far. I thought blocking them would be enough. Turns out, desperation has a way of making people creative. She walked me through setting up a trust for my condo, locking down my financial accounts, and installing a camera system at my place. It all felt extreme, until it didn't. Because less than 2 weeks later, they showed up. I was at work when security called. Elle, there's an older couple here asking for you. Says it's urgent. My stomach flipped. I already knew who it was. I met them in the lobby, mostly because I didn't want them barging upstairs. My parents stood there like it was just another Wednesday. My mom had her classic faux concerned smile, the one she used when trying to sell you on something awful. Elle, she started, like nothing had happened. We just want to talk. I didn't give them the chance. This is not the place. You can't come here. But we're family, Dad said, his voice hardening. Not anymore, I said. Please leave before I call security. They left, but not before Mom muttered something about ungrateful children, and Dad gave me the same look he used to give me when I brought home anything less than an A. That night, my inbox lit up. My cousin, who I hadn't spoken to in a year, messaged me, "Why are you treating your family like this? Uncle Mark said you left them homeless." The smear campaign had begun. The next few days were a whirlwind of chaos. Random numbers called me nonstop. Aunts and uncles I hadn't heard from in years sent guilt-laced Facebook messages. My mom posted a cryptic status. So sad when those you love turn their back on you in your time of need. Luke took it to another level, of course. A full-on rant on Instagram, how his jealous sister wouldn't help him build his dream and how she lived in luxury while her own blood suffered. The comments were a mix of sympathy and skepticism. A few people even tagged me. I didn't reply. I let the storm swirl without me. Meanwhile, I doubled down on protecting my peace. I deleted apps I didn't need, turned off notifications, set up a second number for work stuff. Therapy too. Real weekly therapy. My therapist, Maya, asked one question in our first session that nearly cracked me open. Who are you when no one needs you to be strong? I didn't have an answer. Not yet. But I was about to find out. I started spending my weekends differently. Morning hikes, Sunday markets. I picked up my camera again, an old DSLR that had been gathering dust since college. Photography had always been my thing before life became about surviving everyone else's expectations. Now, I wandered my city snapping photos of crumbling alley murals, quiet parks, the way shadows curved across storefronts at sunset. Funny how seeing the world through a lens made it easier to look inward. Aunt June called weekly. Always short chats, never pushy. She'd say things like, "Just wanted to hear your voice," or "You don't owe anyone anything you've already given." Her voice was like a cup of tea, calm, warm, just what I needed. 3 weeks after I blocked my family, the cease and desist letters went out. Rachel had crafted them like poetry. Direct, legal, bulletproof. She even cited workplace harassment for the office visit and libel for Luke's post. It felt like putting up an invisible force field, and it worked. For a while, the calls slowed. The posts vanished. I could finally breathe again. But peace has a funny way of feeling foreign when you've lived in chaos. I kept waiting for the next hit, the next manipulation, the next ambush. It came from an unexpected angle. A letter. Certified. Official looking. It was from a lawyer, their lawyer. Inside? A claim that the money I'd been sending them over the years wasn't support. It was a loan. And now, they were demanding over $50,000 in repayment. I laughed. Laughed like a woman on the edge. I sent it to Rachel. She read it, then called me. "Elle," she said, already chuckling. "They have no case. Zero documentation, no agreement. It's laughable. But we'll respond properly, just in case they try anything else." It was pathetic, but it confirmed everything I needed to know. They hadn't changed. They weren't sorry. They were desperate. My family would rather destroy me than admit they failed their golden boy. Luke, who still hadn't even tried to contact me directly, let our parents go to war for him. And maybe that was the most hurtful part. That, in his mind, I wasn't even worth reaching out to himself. I thought I'd feel broken. But strangely, I felt lighter. They'd revealed themselves so clearly, so thoroughly, that I no longer had to explain or justify anything to anyone. The fog had lifted. From there, things got better fast. I joined a photography club nervous at first, but the people were kind and passionate. They made me laugh, asked about my projects, not my family drama. For once, I was Elle the artist, not Elle the ATM. I started getting freelance gigs through them, birthday shoots, small weddings, even a restaurant feature. Not huge money, but something that was mine, something I loved. Therapy helped too. Maya helped me name the things I'd never admitted out loud, like how I'd been parenting my parents since I was 14, how guilt had been my leash, how I didn't need to earn love by overextending myself. It was in one of those sessions that I said the words out loud for the first time. I don't want to fix them anymore. And just like that, I was free. I wasn't fully healed, but I was healing. And there's a quiet kind of power in that. Then came the night I found Luke's new job listing. A friend from the photography club worked in marketing and mentioned a guy named Luke Carver who'd just started at their competitor firm. The same guy who'd once called me a bitter corporate drone for climbing the ladder without taking risks. Poetic, really. He'd been demoted to junior coordinator, starting salary, no perks. His LinkedIn read like a dating profile from someone trying too hard. Creative entrepreneur seeking corporate rebirth. I didn't comment, didn't even smile, I just noted it, a bookmark in my mind. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. When people show you who they are, let them. Then walk away and build something so beautiful, they can't touch it. By month 4, the silence from my family wasn't peace, it was strategy. I'd learned enough by now to know that when manipulators go quiet, they're not done, they're regrouping. And sure enough, I was right. One evening, I got a notification from the security cam outside my condo. My heart kicked up, but I didn't panic. I'd seen enough by now to know how this game worked. I checked the feed. There they were, my parents, standing awkwardly outside my building like teenagers waiting for someone to sneak them into a party. My mom looked thinner, hair frizzed from humidity, wearing a sweater I hadn't seen since I was in high school. Dad looked smaller somehow, tired. Hands stuffed in his pockets. They knocked twice, called my name, waited. Then they left a note wedged in the doorframe. I didn't open it until the next morning. It was what I expected. a soft apology mixed with subtle guilt. "We miss you. Let's talk. Family should stick together through hard times." No mention of the fake debt claim. No acknowledgement of the way they humiliated me. Just more of the same half-hearted pull at my conscience. I forwarded it to Rachel, who reminded me to document everything and only respond through legal channels if absolutely necessary. I didn't reply. Didn't need to. I didn't feel angry anymore. Just empty. It's wild how people can hollow you out so completely that even their apology, however flimsy, doesn't stir anything anymore. Aunt June heard about the doorstep visit through the grapevine. She called me that night. "They're not coming from a place of growth, sweetheart. They're coming from a place of loss." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "I know. They're learning that love isn't a given. It's earned." She had a way of putting things that stuck with me long after we hung up. Around that time, I did something for myself I hadn't done in, maybe ever. I booked a solo trip. 1 week in Arizona, hiking the Grand Canyon. Just me, my camera, and the kind of stillness you can't find in a city. No one asking for anything. No fake birthday dinners. No backhanded compliments. Just silence. Real silence. The good kind. The trip changed me more than I expected. I hiked alone for hours, legs aching, lungs burning, but I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years. I stood on a cliff at sunrise, the light pouring over ancient rock like liquid gold, and I felt something crack open inside me, something gentle. I wasn't broken. I was healing. Back home, I fell into a rhythm. Work during the week, photography on weekends, dinner with Aunt June every Thursday. Little pockets of life that finally felt mine. Then, one Thursday, she dropped the update I'd been waiting for. "They sold the house," she said, sipping her tea. "Moved into a small 2-bedroom condo across town." I raised an eyebrow. "Seriously?" "Seriously. They're behind on everything now. Mortgage, credit cards. Your dad even asked his brother for a loan." He said no. That surprised me. Uncle Brian was one of their loyal defenders. Always played the blood is blood card. "Even Luke?" I asked. She nodded. "He's in a rented studio now. Sold his car. The new job's barely covering rent." I didn't gloat. I didn't grin. I just sat with it. Because this wasn't revenge. Not really. This was gravity. They'd spent years propping Luke up on a pedestal built from other people's sacrifices. And now, it was crumbling under its own weight. The truth was catching up, and I wasn't chasing it. I was just watching it unfold. The old me would have felt guilty. Would have wondered if I'd gone too far. But the new me? She understood something important. Choosing yourself isn't cruelty. It's clarity. Around that same time, I got a message request on Instagram. It was from a burner account, no profile picture, just a single line. "You win? Happy now?" I blocked it without a second thought. Then I got an email from my mom, sent to my work address, which she absolutely shouldn't have had. Likely came from Luke. It was longer this time. Desperate. Dramatic. They were 3 months behind on rent. Luke's credit had tanked. They had nowhere to go. Could I please help just one more time? I didn't even hesitate. I forwarded it straight to Rachel. She fired off a legal response within the hour, warning them not to contact me again, reminding them that breaching the no-contact boundary could result in escalation. That was the last straw for them, I think, because after that it got ugly. They tried to paint me as the villain to the extended family. Again. But this time, fewer people bought into it. Aunt June told me the narrative was falling apart. Too many cracks. Too many whispers about how Luke had burned bridges even before this. People were finally putting 2 and 2 together. "They're learning," June said, "that the golden boy is just spray-painted cardboard." That line stuck with me for days. Around the 6-month mark, something strange happened. I started sleeping through the night. It sounds small, but if you've ever lived in constant tension waiting for the next guilt trip, the next ask, the next collapse, you know how rare that is. My body had been holding on to stress like a second skin. Now, it was finally letting go. I felt it in the way my shoulders relaxed when I walked into my apartment. In the way I looked at my reflection and actually saw a woman who looked content. I started dating again carefully, slowly. Someone from the photography club. He was quiet in the best way. Listened more than he talked. Respected my space. No games, no ego. He once told me, I like that you're solid, like you've lived. And for the first time, that didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a compliment. I didn't tell him everything, not yet, but I knew I would eventually. And when I did, it would be on my terms, not as some trauma dump, but as part of my story, a past I survived. I still had moments, of course. Guilt doesn't just vanish, it lingers like fog some mornings. But now, I could name it. See it for what it was, a learned response, not a moral compass. I'd trained myself to feel responsible for everyone else's choices. Now, I was unlearning that. Every day a little more. Then, one afternoon, a friend from work pulled me aside. "Hey, weird question. Do you know a guy named Luke Carver?" My heart ticked up. "Yeah. Why?" "He applied here. Didn't get past the first round, but he listed you as a reference." I blinked. "Wait, what?" "Yeah. Said you were his mentor at your last company. Our hiring manager was confused because, well, you don't work there anymore." I stared at her, stunned, then burst out laughing. Of course he did. Even now, Luke was trying to climb up on my name, still clinging to the scraps of whatever advantage he thought I had left to give. I had my friend pass the info to Rachel. Not because I was worried, just because I was tired. Tired of the games. Tired of being orbiting gravity for people who refused to land. The next weekend, I took a drive out of the city. Found a tiny cabin in the woods I'd been eyeing online for months. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Or would be. I put in an offer on the spot. A week later, it was accepted. And just like that, I had a second home, a place to breathe, to take photos, to heal, to exist quietly, intentionally, fully. As I stood on the porch for the first time, looking out over the trees, I felt it again, that lightness, that space in my chest where anxiety used to live. This wasn't just survival anymore. It was freedom. It had been almost 8 months since that dinner. 8 months since I'd walked out of my parents' house for the last time. I thought I'd feel lighter with distance, and I did mostly. But some things, they stick. You can cut a rope and still feel the burn where it was tied too tight. It was a quiet Saturday morning at the cabin. I had coffee in one hand, camera in the other. The forest had a way of silencing everything that didn't matter: emails, voicemails, memories. Out here, even the loudest regrets sounded like whispers. I was finally learning how to listen to myself. Not the inner critic I'd inherited from years of guilt and gaslighting, but the quieter voice, the one I'd ignored for too long. The one that asked questions like, "What do you want? What if you let go completely?" That morning, I opened my laptop to check a gallery I'd submitted to a local magazine. It was just a side project, a collection of street portraits and cityscapes I'd worked on for months. I didn't expect much, but there it was, an email sitting in my inbox with a subject line that made my breath catch. "We'd love to feature your work in our spring issue." I blinked, read it again, and smiled. It wasn't a grand moment. No fireworks, no music swell, just a soft, simple affirmation. "You did this on your own, no help, no favors, no backroom handshakes. Just me, my work, and a camera that still creaked when I adjusted the focus." Later that evening, I visited Aunt June. She had this way of grounding me. Her house always smelled like lemon balm and old books. She handed me a mug of tea before I even sat down. "I got published," I said. She beamed. "Of course you did. No one had to be convinced." No one pretended to care while mentally calculating what they could get out of it. Just pride. Real, steady, bone-deep pride. She sat across from me and said, "I heard from your cousin. Word is, your parents are trying to sell off what little jewelry they have left. Even your grandmother's ring." I swallowed. That ring had meant something once. She used to let me try it on when I was little, called it my someday sparkle. Now it was a pawn shop item. "They're spiraling," she added softly. "And Luke? Still bouncing between jobs. Someone said he tried to launch another side hustle, a digital marketing agency. Apparently, he was offering consulting sessions for $400 an hour." I let out a sharp breath. "What does he even consult on? Failing upward?" We both laughed, the kind of laugh that tastes a little bitter, a little sweet. "He used your name again," she said after a pause. "Said you used to help run his projects, that you ghosted him after he made you successful." That didn't even sting anymore. I was tired of being surprised by how low they'd go. At some point, you stop measuring the fall. I'm not angry, I said, and I meant it. I just don't care anymore, and that was the truth. Anger takes energy, and mine was finally going where it belonged toward me. A few days later, I visited the city again. I had to drop off a print order at the gallery and check on my condo. The walls still smelled faintly like cinnamon from the last candle I'd burned there. It felt small now, not in size, but in spirit. Not in a bad way, just like a past version of me still lived in those corners. That night, I lit a single candle on the balcony, watched the skyline flicker, and I did something I didn't expect. I pulled out my phone and looked at the last family photo I had saved. It was Christmas. 3 years ago, Luke standing front and center with his smug grin. My parents on either side of him, glowing like he'd just cured cancer. And me slightly off to the side, like I had wandered into the frame by accident. I used to keep it as motivation, as proof, a reminder of what I was always trying to fix. But now, I was done fixing things that broke me. I tapped delete, watched the screen flash, then fade to black, gone. And in that small, quiet act, something shifted. That night, I recorded a voice memo. Not for anyone else, just for me. I sat cross-legged on the living room floor, phone resting on my knee. I forgive you, I said. Not for your sake, for mine. I forgive you for making me feel invisible, for teaching me love came with a price tag, for telling me I was only valuable when I was useful. I forgive you, but I won't forget, and I won't come back. Then I pressed stop and saved it. A week later, another letter came, this time from a different law firm. They were claiming I owed my parents money again, that the monthly support I'd given for years had been loans, that I had agreed, in some invisible fantasy universe, to pay them back with interest. $52,000. I actually laughed, out loud, sitting at my kitchen table with toast in one hand and that nonsense in the other. I forwarded it to Rachel. She responded with a single line, "They must really be circling the drain to try this. And then I'll take care of it. You just keep living." I did exactly that. The spring issue came out 2 weeks later. My photo was on the inside cover, an old woman on a park bench with sunlight slanting through trees behind her. I'd titled it, "Stillness Finds Her." People messaged me, strangers, saying it made them cry, made them remember their mothers, made them pause. That meant more than anything my family had ever said to me. Meanwhile, Luke, word got around that he'd defaulted on his car lease, that he'd been evicted again. My mom sent a final Hail Mary and email from a burner address. "We're about to lose everything. Can't you help, even a little? You have so much now." No subject line, just desperation in black and white. I didn't reply. I didn't rage or scream or draft a clever retort. I just blocked the sender. Again, the truth is, I did have a lot now, but not in the way they meant. I had my life, my peace, my breath back. I had mornings that started without dread. I had nights that ended without tears. I had friendships rooted in kindness, not obligation. A partner who respected my space. A home that felt like mine, not a temporary rest stop between family emergencies. And I had a spine that no one would bend again. The past, it was there, but it didn't lead me anymore. It sat behind me like old luggage I no longer carried. Just a reminder of how strong I'd become walking uphill with it for so long. They wanted to break me, or maybe they never wanted me whole in the first place. But I wasn't broken. I was awake. And nothing scared them more than that. By the time summer rolled in, the drama had cooled, at least on the surface. No new emails, no lawyers, no surprise doorstep visits, just quiet. But quiet from people like them isn't silence, it's hibernation, a pause, a regroup. So I didn't let my guard down. I kept the cameras up, kept everything documented. Rachel said it best. People like that don't walk away, they wait for a crack. But I wasn't cracking anymore. I wasn't even flinching. Instead, I leaned into life. My photography got picked up by another local gallery. A small solo show this time. Nothing glamorous, just a one-night event, but it was mine. I hung the prints myself, cleaned the glass, lit the room just right. People came, real people, strangers who saw something in my work. A couple even asked if I'd consider teaching a workshop. That night, as I stood in that little room surrounded by my own art, I realized something quietly beautiful. This is what it feels like to be seen without being used. One of the guests at the gallery was the guy I'd been dating. His name was Nolan. Calm voice, curious eyes, always a little rumpled in the best way. He didn't try to fix me. Didn't ask for the story behind every scar. He just showed up. After the event, we walked to a little wine bar around the corner. The kind of place with flickering candles on tiny tables and jazz humming low in the background. "I've never seen you glow like that," he said, tilting his head. "You looked free." "I felt it," I admitted. Finally, we sat in the soft silence for a while before he asked, "Do you ever think about reaching out to them?" It wasn't judgmental, just a question. I looked out the window. The night was warm, breezy, like the wind had decided to let go too. "No," I said. "I've said everything that needed to be said, and what wasn't said, that's on them." He nodded, and that was it. No follow-up, no push, just understanding. That's when I knew I could trust him. Not long after, Aunt June called. She sounded off. "They filed something," she said without preamble. "What do you mean? Your parents?" "There's a rumor going around. Said they're talking about suing again, but this time saying you stole from Luke. Something about a joint investment. That he gave you money for your condo." I blinked, stunned. "What? It's nonsense." "But you should know. They're desperate, scraping the bottom." I sat there staring at nothing. The condo had been mine, bought with years of saving. I had every receipt, every transfer, every document. Luke had never given me a dime, not even for dinner. But they weren't trying to win. They were trying to wear me down. Rachel called it a smear-by-paper strategy. Filing false claims just to rattle me. Cost me time, money, sleep. "Don't worry," she said firmly. "We'll bury it before it breathes." And we did. She shut it down within days. Sent a brutal response with attached financial records, notarized proof of ownership, and a counter warning for defamation if they ever tried it again. The claim died before it lived. But still, it shook something loose in me. Not fear, not sadness, just finality. Like a door that had always been cracked open had finally slammed shut. That weekend, I drove back to the cabin. I needed the trees, the dirt, the stillness. I spent the whole day outside barefoot, camera in hand, letting the sun warm places inside me that had been cold for years. At sunset, I stood on the porch and watched the horizon bleed into amber and gold. I pulled out my phone, opened the voice recorder, and pressed record again. This time, I didn't speak to my parents. Or Luke. I spoke to myself. "Elle," I began, "you are not what they said you were. You are not selfish. You are not cold. You are not the disappointment they tried to make you believe. You survived a family that fed on your silence. You learned to breathe in rooms where love came with receipts. You gave, and when they demanded more, you finally said no. That's not failure, that's freedom." I paused. "You didn't lose your family, you lost a role you were never meant to play. And what you gained is everything." Click. Save. That night, I deleted the last email thread I had saved, the one where Luke had called me bitter. The one where Mom said I'd regret this. The one where Dad accused me of being the reason for the family's collapse. Gone. Like dead leaves off a tree. Let them rot. A week later, I got an unexpected text from a number I didn't recognize. Just one line, "They're taking the condo. We're out of options. You win. Luke." No hi, no apology, no reflection. Just another attempt to twist the knife one last time. I stared at it. No anger. No heartbreak. Just a strange kind of pity. Then I blocked the number. Again. Some people never learn. But I did. I learned how to stand up, how to stay standing, how to build a life with no strings attached to people who only pull. I learned that peace is quiet, but it's also firm. That love without respect isn't love, it's control. That being the strong one doesn't mean bending until you break. It means knowing when to walk away and meaning it. Nolan and I started spending more time at the cabin. He brought books, made terrible campfire coffee, and insisted on naming every bird we saw. One weekend, he built a tiny bench by the lake for me to sit and sketch or shoot photos. He called it Elle's Lookout. I called it home. One evening, as the crickets started to hum and the sky turned soft with dusk, he looked over and said, I think you saved yourself. I didn't answer right away. I was watching the reflection of trees ripple across the lake. Then I said, no, I think I just stopped handing myself over to people who never deserved me. And for the first time in years, I believed every word. The thing no one tells you about letting go is that it doesn't always feel like a grand release. Sometimes it's quiet, like a door you don't realize you've closed until you find yourself in a new room, breathing air that doesn't burn. It had been nearly a year since the birthday dinner that changed everything. 1 year since I said no and walked out of a life that demanded everything from me but never gave anything back. And in that year, I became someone I actually liked. No more monthly payments to keep love on life support. No more walking on emotional eggshells. No more defining myself by what I could offer instead of who I was. Just me. Whole, clear, untangled. My days had a rhythm now. I worked, but not to exhaustion. I created without pressure. I woke up without dread. I took deep breaths that filled my lungs instead of catching halfway through my chest. The cabin had become more than a retreat, it was a reset. I spent weekends there with Nolan, or alone when I needed it. The stillness didn't scare me anymore. It grounded me. We built routines that felt sacred in their simplicity. Mornings with fresh coffee and bare feet on the porch. Evenings with fireflies blinking in the dark. Sometimes we didn't even speak, just shared space like it was language. One Sunday afternoon, I was organizing old boxes I'd pulled out of the condo's storage. Things I hadn't touched in years. Yearbooks, broken headphones, cards with hollow birthday wishes. Then I found it, a sealed envelope. My name written in my dad's handwriting, heavy pen strokes, no return address. No idea how it ended up in that box. I almost threw it away unopened. But curiosity has teeth, and mine had always been sharp. I opened it slowly. One page, no greeting, no signature. Just this, you were always the strong one, but we never knew how to love you right. I hope one day you'll understand we were just scared of who you were becoming, because it meant you didn't need us anymore. I stared at the words for a long time, not because they broke me, because they didn't. It wasn't an apology, it was an explanation, one that came too late, one I didn't need anymore. I folded it once, then again, tucked it in the back of my journal, not as a keepsake, but as a record, a reminder of how far I'd come. That evening, I sat out on the cabin porch with Nolan, both of us wrapped in a blanket as the temperature dipped. He could sense something was on my mind but didn't push. That's what I loved about him. He didn't try to fix, just held space. Do you think people like that ever change? I asked. He looked out at the trees. Maybe, but most only change when the consequences outweigh the comfort of staying the same. And if they never get there, then they stay stuck, while the rest of us move forward. Simple truth. No fluff, no hope packaged in delusion. I nodded, then leaned against his shoulder. That was the last time I thought about the letter. A month later, my parents filed for bankruptcy. Aunt June told me over dinner like she was reading the weather. Calm, factual. They burned through everything, she said. Even sold Luke's old trophies at a garage sale. And now they're trying to live off credit that doesn't exist. What about Luke? Luke. Still blaming everyone but himself. Told someone at church that you ruined his future. I just smiled. I didn't ruin it. I refused to fund it. June laughed into her tea. There it is. The thing is, their downfall didn't bring me joy. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like consequence finally catching up after running red lights for decades. They'd built their kingdom on sand. All I did was stop holding the walls up. A few weeks after the bankruptcy became public, I received a formal letter. Different law firm, same old name. This time, my parents were claiming that the monthly money I had sent them over the years was an informal agreement to support them indefinitely. They were asking the court to mandate continued support. The audacity was exhausting. Rachel took one look at the letter and burst out laughing. They must be joking. They're not, I said. But the court will see it for what it is. We'll file a motion to dismiss and include every receipt, every transfer, every message. They'll have nothing. I nodded. I wasn't even angry, just done. That was the final move. their last pathetic attempt to keep a grip on me. The case was thrown out in less than 2 weeks. No one showed up to represent them. No follow-up, just silence. That was when I knew for real this time it was over. The family I was born into had finally given up pretending I was theirs to control, and I had stopped trying to make them love me the way I needed. We were free of each other. I didn't mourn it. I mourned the time I spent trying to make a home in people who kept locking the doors behind me. But even grief changes shape. It becomes something you carry without bitterness, a stone polished by water. And as for Luke, he still floated around social media, posting motivational quotes and pretending he was consulting for companies that didn't exist. Occasionally, someone would send me screenshots hoping I'd react. I didn't. That part of my story was closed. Instead, I built something new. I started teaching weekend photography workshops. Nothing big, just a handful of students at a time. Some were teenagers looking for creative escape. Others were women my age trying to remember who they were before everyone else's expectations piled up. One of them asked me once, "How did you learn to say no?" I paused, then said, "I didn't learn, I remembered." She frowned. Remembered what? That I wasn't put here to burn just so other people could stay warm. That became the core of everything I taught after that. How to see the light, how to hold stillness, how to let the frame be enough. One day, I was cleaning up after a session when I got a text from Nolan. It was a photo. The bench by the lake, newly sanded and sealed. A tiny wooden plaque had been added. It read, "Elle's Lookout, for the woman who finally saw herself." I stared at it, tears brimming, but they didn't fall, not this time. They settled, softly, like rain that knows where it's going. That night, I sat by the water and read back through the journal entries I'd written over the last year. The patterns were clear, each page a turning, each chapter a shedding, every scar becoming something else, something softer. And on the final page, I wrote, "I choose me." Every time. No apology, no explanation. Then I closed the journal, tucked it under my arm, and walked back to the cabin. The wind rustled through the trees like a whisper, and I listened, really listened, as if the earth itself had waited all this time to say, "You did it. You came home." Story 2. I take it you won't see your own sister? My sister made fun of it. In any case, I brought the action. Threats and entreaties flooded my phone the next evening. I never imagined having to bring a lawsuit against my own sister. However, you discover the true meaning of family when $7,000 disappears and your relatives make fun of you for it. Ronald is my name. I am 30 years old, have held 2 jobs, and have always been the one in charge. Courtney, my 27-year-old sister, has never had to deal with the fallout from anything in her life. Our dynamic as children was straightforward. She was permitted to be the hurricane, and I was supposed to be the rock. 3 years of late hours at my second job were symbolized by the emergency money. 3 years of refusing to take trips, go out, or enjoy the little pleasures that make life more tolerable. 3 years of juggling my day job as an IT professional with weekend labor at a warehouse. I'd put it away for unexpected medical needs. After witnessing our cousin's unplanned medical stay wreck their finances, that was not going to happen to me. I stored the money in my flat, tucked away in my bedroom in an old computer tower. More than I would like to acknowledge, I had inherited my father's mistrust of banks. It's lawful for banks to steal from you. He would add that I now see the irony. In retrospect, I ought to have recognized the red flags with Courtney, blinking like caution lights. They were there. She required emergency loans all the time, but I decided to disregard them. I was unaware of her increasingly complex justifications for her financial difficulties by the middle of the month, even though she had a respectable salary, because of the manner she avoided answering calls from numbers. 2 months prior to things blowing up, she had begged me for $500 to cover her rent till payday, and she was tapping her foot nervously whenever the topic of money came up. She pledged. I handed it to her. No enquiries were made. Payday arrived and then left. I brought it up, and she became defensive. "You're really counting pennies with me, God? Your sister is me." She got a new phone a week later, highest quality. She said it was a work cost when I questioned her about it. Although I was aware that her employer provided staff with typical mid-range phones, I chose to believe the lie since it was simpler than confronting the issue. When I had to take a plane to Chicago for a 2-week job training program, Courtney offered to watch, care for, and apartment my cat, Luna. My kitchen and living room were equipped with security cameras. There are no precautions in the bedroom, but they are standard in my neighborhood. I never imagined that I would have to defend myself against relatives. I recall being hesitant to go. Lately, Courtney had been acting oddly. Jumpy, always checking her phone, and abruptly canceling arrangements. However, I turned over the keys after attributing it to a recent split. Something didn't feel right as I returned to my flat. At the entrance, Luna greeted me, but the atmosphere was different. I quickly scanned. Everything appeared to be rather normal. I then proceeded to my bedroom to unpack and see how much money was left in my emergency fund. My hands became numb. The room began to swirl. The waterproof bag that held my life safety net was empty, and the side panel of the computer tower was slightly open. $7,000. With my heart beating against my chest, I contacted Courtney right away. "Hey, did you enter my bedroom while you were keeping an eye on things?" I made an effort to speak steadily. "Yes. Why?" It was the same reckless lilt in her voice. It did every time. "Have you stolen any cash from my computer tower?" A pause, followed by a chuckle. A real chuckle. "Yes, I did accept it. What the heck? I needed to pay some expenses." On the opposite end of the queue, I could hear her chewing gum. My voice broke. My emergency money was that, $7,000. Courtney. "Thus, you always boast about how successful your fancy work is. You may just resave it." Her fingernails tapping on her phone screen caught my attention. "In addition, I was in greater need of it than you were. I'll be over," I said, reaching for my keys immediately. "In any case, don't delay, I'm leaving shortly, if you're going to make a big deal out of this." 30 minutes later, she answered the door of her flat wearing brand new clothing I had never seen before. On her coffee table behind her were shopping bags bearing designer logos. "Courtney, where's my money?" I didn't enter at all. She gave an eye roll. As I mentioned, I used money to pay bills and other expenses. Bills and such? The bills totaled $7,000. She gave a shrug. "You see, I needed it. I take it you won't sue your own sister?" High and mocking, she laughed once again. "Even for you, that would be pitiful." In the doorway, I used the speakerphone to contact our parents. I was taken aback by their response, not because they instantly agreed with her, but rather because they did not. When I informed them what had happened, there was a long, heavy pause. "Are you certain?" At last, Mom's voice asked. "Be cautious. Ronald, that's a big charge." She simply came clean to me about it. One more pause. "Courtney," Dad said in a strained tone. "Is this accurate?" Suddenly defensive, Courtney responded, "I was going to pay it back. He's exaggerating the situation. $7,000. I made a lengthy, worn-out sound, Courtney, repeating my entire emergency fund Dad's side. "As a family, we must discuss this. On Sunday, both of you should come over for dinner. Before Sunday, I would like my money returned," I demanded. "Mom, please, Ronald, cut in. Give us some time to resolve this. Together, we'll figure it out." I wanted to think they were real. For once, I hoped my parents would hold Courtney responsible. Not in my gut, though. Told me not to. My parents' suburban ranch house, where we had grown up, was the location of Sunday supper. Before supper, as Mom and Courtney were setting the table, Dad called me away. "Look," he replied quietly, "your sisters are going through a difficult time. She is still family even though she made a mistake. An error. She took $700 from me, Dad. I am aware, and that is unacceptable." However, he lowered his voice even more as he looked towards the kitchen. "She has several problems. She is having financial difficulties. It's too much for her. I have no problem with it. Obviously not. However, we must approach this with empathy. Establish a payment schedule. Perhaps." It sounded quite reasonable. It wasn't fantastic, but at least they were admitting her mistake. Reluctantly, I nodded. Then, 20 minutes late, Courtney arrived with a brand new blouse and a high-end handbag that most likely cost more than my 2-week salary. As the evening went on, all hope I had for a genuine conclusion vanished. One moment, Courtney portrayed the victim as teary-eyed, and the next, defensive. My parents constantly diverting the discussion from practical fixes. Mom patted Courtney's hand and whispered, We just need to help your sister through this difficult time. She is aware that what she did was improper. I apologized. Courtney mumbled without showing any remorse. I said, "Sorry, doesn't pay back $7,000. Why are you acting like such a jerk over this?" Courtney lost her temper. "You're not exactly famished. You have the ideal job and flat, which I can only afford by working 2 jobs." Dad held out his hands. "Calm down, everyone. Nothing will be resolved by yelling." But as the meal went on, it became evident that covering things up was the only way to support Courtney at this trying time. There were just ambiguous assurances that she would do better, no actual responsibility, and no clear repayment schedule. Why are you unable to simply let things go? At last, Dad spoke with a hint of impatience. "Here, be the larger person." Courtney looked at her manicure and knew what was inside. Ronald is such a jerk, my goodness. No one wants to spend time with him because of this. When I brought up the loss of my life money, they pretended that I was disrupting dinner. I was sitting there with my fork halfway to my lips when I suddenly had a clear vision of my family. It wasn't me who was in charge. The ATM that was supposed to provide cash and permission without any issues was me. My knuckles became white on the steering wheel that night as I drove home. My teeth ached from the tightness of my jaw. The radio blared the Seahawks game. My dad's handy diversion is now coming home with me. I jabbed it violently to turn it off. I gave my friend Derek, a paralegal, a call the next day. His response was quite straightforward. "Dude," he continued, "that's felony theft. Is it family? She committed a crime. What should I do then? Keep a record of everything. Call logs, bank records, text messages, and a history of your withdrawals. Next, consult a lawyer, an attorney against my own sister. Would you want to just bid $7,000 farewell? Because you have that option here." I followed Derek's advice to the letter over the next week. I collected 3 years' worth of bank statements that documented my regular cash withdrawals. I kept the texts in which Courtney acknowledged stealing the money. Before transferring the money to the computer tower, I had first kept it in my safe, and I even discovered a receipt for it. My parents alternated between supporting Courtney and acting as mediators at this period. Dad contacted me twice and offered me compromises that essentially meant I had to accept the loss. "What if she reimburses half of it?" he recommended. "It seems reasonable. How fair is that?" "She absorbed it all. She's your sister. Ronald's family supports his family." Mom was very sentimental. One evening, she called me while crying. Courtney informed me that this is causing her to have panic episodes. Her voice wavered as she spoke. "Is harming your sister truly worth the money? In this manner, something had hardened in me, even if the guilt trips could have worked in the past. If she is experiencing panic attacks, it is because she stole thousands of dollars and, for the first time in her life, she may be held accountable." The scent of leather and lemon polish filled the lawyer's office. Miss Reynolds had nice eyes but wore a navy pantsuit and rarely smiled. Without interruption, she listened to my account, taking notes on a yellow legal pad from time to time. When I was done, she added, "Family cases are always difficult. However, from a legal standpoint, this is simple. Theft was done by your sister. In this state, the sum is grand theft, a crime." I responded hastily, "I don't want to get her arrested. All I want is my money returned." Next, we begin with a letter of demand, formal legal document outlining the specifics of what was taken and the penalties for her failure to return it. Sometimes that's sufficient to fix the problem. I nodded, my stomach churning with a mixture of relief and fear. How much will I have to pay for this? My $1,500 retainer should cover the demand letter and preliminary discussions. We will talk about further costs if we must launch a lawsuit. More cash? There was nothing more I had to give up. However, something changed inside of me as I signed the retainer agreement. Money was no longer the only factor in this. It was about refusing to spend another day as the doormat for the family. On a Tuesday, the demand letter was sent out. My phone was blowing up by Tuesday night. Not only did Courtney text me, but my parents did as well. In a flash, they had transformed from reluctant mediators to fervent Courtney supporters. Courtney's texts were erratic, alternating between desperation and anger. 10:42 p.m. Courtney. "What's wrong with you? 10:43 p.m. Courtney is an attorney. Are you serious now? 10:57 p.m. You coward, Courtney. Pick up your phone. 11:13 p.m. I swear to God, Courtney, you will regret this. 11:47 p.m. Ronald, please, Courtney. I apologize. Give me a call back, please. I'm going crazy. The voicemails followed. What a pitiful little worm you are. Do you believe you can intimidate me? I'll share your high school accomplishments with everyone. Don't put me to the test. An hour later, it came next. Goodbye. I beg you, Ronald, please. I am unable to repay it in full at this time. Give me a call, please. I'm afraid. Next were my parents. Your father is this. Give me a call back right away. You've gone too far. It's Mom, honey. What are you doing? This family has endured enough without the involvement of solicitors. Please think again. Then came the flying monkeys. I received calls from aunts, uncles, and even my cousin Tyler, with whom I hadn't spoken in years, reminding me of the value of family. To help me make sense of things, my Aunt Sandra actually flew in from Phoenix. Mostly out of curiosity, I consented to meet her at a coffee shop. Your parents are devastated, she said, vigorously stirring her coffee. Due to his daughter stealing $7,000, your father hasn't slept for days. Or because I'm not going to act like it never happened? Because his son is threatening to sue his daughter. What sort of a family would do that? Apparently, the type in which one member plunders another. Her voice fell to a dramatic whisper as she leaned forward. Ronald, your sister is having issues. Actual issues. This isn't assisting. What issues? Shopping, addiction, entitlement, having been lavished with attention all of her life. Aunt Sandra's cheeks turned red. I have no right to say that, I said. Then it's not my problem to solve, and got up to go. I appreciate the coffee. My father gave me another call that night. His voice was no longer thunderous. Instead, it was something I hardly ever heard. Fear. You will no longer be a member of this family if you follow through on this. Can you comprehend me? It was only made more obvious by the threat that was meant to shatter me. I realized that I wasn't truly a member of this family. You all laughed when I told you that Courtney had stolen my savings. You're not thankful, he began, then halted himself. Pay close attention to what you're doing, son. Have you? I have. I blocked his phone after hanging up. Then Courtney's, then my mom's. The quiet that ensued was the most tranquil thing I had felt in weeks. The litigation procedure wasn't as simple as I had thought. Courtney sought a lawyer after receiving the written complaint. Naturally, my folks paid for it. She denied taking the entire amount as her first action. The statement from her lawyer said, "My client admits to borrowing some money, but the amount claimed is grossly exaggerated." They attempted Delay's plea for extensions when that failed. Conflicts in scheduling. Anything to make the procedure take longer. Most likely hopping. I would either run out of money to pay my lawyer or give up from weariness. The whole thing was exposed by Miss Reynolds. Traditional delaying strategies. They're hoping you'll give in, she said. I didn't. A preliminary motion was the subject of the initial court hearing. Courtney and my parents arrived, all three of them dressed as though they were going to a funeral. As her attorney contended that this was a straightforward family dispute that had no place in court, she refused to look at me directly and instead stared at the floor. The judge, a lady in her 60s with a no-nonsense manner and silver-rimmed glasses, wasn't buying it. Either the funds were stolen or they weren't. Based on the evidence presented, including the defendant's own admission via text message, she added, slicing through the lawyer's flowery rhetoric, the request to dismiss is being denied by me. At last, Courtney came up to me outside the courthouse, her eyes rimmed with red. Her voice was hardly audible above a whisper. She replied, I can't pay it all back right now. I don't possess it. I nearly felt terrible for her for a second. Then I recalled the manicure, the expensive handbag, and the new outfits. Courtney, where did it go? Why did you feel the need to take from me? She turned her head away. I owed money. What sort of debts? She didn't respond. The truth was revealed throughout the discovery process. Miss Reynolds discovered the true cause of Courtney's extreme financial need. Tens of thousands of dollars are owing to the type of people that don't send courteous demand letters. When you don't pay for gambling debts, not just little losses. Although the bills continued to mount, my parents were aware that they had been assisting her in paying these individuals off for months. She resorted to my emergency fund when they were unable to keep up. They did more than simply embezzle my money. As I sat in Miss Reynolds' office going over the facts, I saw that they had put me in danger without even notifying me. Miss Reynolds affirmed that these individuals are hazardous. Your sister is in a dire circumstance. My mother texted me on my phone, which I had unblocked for legal contacts. Given that your sister is in danger, how could you do this? I responded to the SMS. How could you endanger me without informing me first? Courtney and my parents tried one more. Hail Mary even after the proof was shown. They made a $3,500 settlement offer. The remainder once she can afford it, which translates to never miss, Reynolds said. They're still trying to persuade you to accept half. I said no. They were bizarre judicial hearings. The judge's calm voice, the resonant acoustics, and the courtroom seats polished wood. I didn't feel like I was living, but rather watching a movie. Courtney took a seat on the other side. No high-end clothing today. Her face was pallid. Her typical self-assurance had been replaced with frantic fidgeting and darting eyes. After hearing all sides and considering the evidence, the judge took just 3 seconds to make her verdict. It is abundantly evident from the evidence that the defendant took $7,000 from the plaintiff without authorization. Did you take this money, Miss Sullivan? Courtney's voice could hardly be heard. Indeed, Your Honor. Do you have it to give back? No, not all of it. As though anticipating this response, the judge nodded. The plaintiff is then granted a favorable ruling by the court. The entire sum plus legal expenses will be reimbursed by the defendant. The defendant's accounts will be frozen by the court until repayment arrangements are reached. Courtney's expression fell flat. Sitting behind her, my parents appeared to have aged by 10 years. They came up to me outside the courthouse. Mom had crimson rims around her eyes. I had never seen Dad's shoulders drop like this before. Mom murmured, "Please. The freezing of her accounts is too much for her to bear. Her rent is still due. Before stealing my money, she ought to have considered that." I answered, astonished at how steady my voice was. "We can figure something out," Dad remarked, losing his tone of authority. "A mutual payment schedule. The involvement of the courts is no longer necessary. A judgment has already been rendered. It's finished. Please, Ronald." My mom took hold of my arm. We are related. I took her hand away gently. "That's right. Family members shouldn't take from one another, or hide it, or place the blame on the victim." In the months that followed, Courtney found it difficult to make the required payments. She consigned her high-end clothing and purses. She left her opulent apartment and moved into a studio that was half as big. She started driving deliveries as a second job. Through common acquaintances, I saw her Instagram presence fade from regular updates about brunches and shopping excursions to almost complete stillness. I had heard that she was learning to cook instead of ordering takeaway, that her new house was simple but tidy, and that she was attending a therapy for her gambling problem. The entire $7,000 plus $2,300 in legal expenses was sent into my account after the last payment was received. As promised, I dropped the lawsuit right away. They hadn't maintained their word, but I had. After several weeks, the invites began to arrive. Sunday meal, lunch on Mom's birthday, an informal cookout, text messages that are phony happy. You are missed. Without you, family game night won't be the same. Hurry up. It's water under the bridge. Correct. I never answered or gave an explanation. I just failed to appear. My emergency fund was fully restored 6 months after the court process. I had relocated to a more secure flat. I had begun dating a person who valued limits and thought that there should be repercussions. Setting boundaries and avoiding those who couldn't respect them had brought me calm. On a random Tuesday, I ran into Courtney in the grocery store. Although she appeared slimmer and less put together, she nonetheless exuded presence. When they looked at each other, I saw that she recognized me but did not feel entitled. She adjusted her shopping cart and added, "Ronald, how are you?" "I'm fine," I said. "Are you arriving?" She hesitated. "I have abstained from gambling for 9 months." "That's excellent." We are awkwardly silent for a while. "Well," she responded at last, "look for yourself. You as well, Courtney." We had become distant acquaintances. and we passed each other by like that. On my birthday, Mom still tries sending me an SMS occasionally. I'm conspicuously missing from a family portrait on a Christmas card. Dad hasn't made any contact. His pride will not let it. That's okay with me. The fact that we are silent about him and them all says a lot about who they are. Although I received my $7,000 back, the true value of what I obtained was far more. The understanding that my limits are important and that I should be respected. Family is about how you treat each other, not just about blood. Standing up for yourself might sometimes mean being by yourself. However, I would much prefer be by myself with my dignity than be surrounded by people who saw me as merely a resource to be used up. Maple syrup is thicker than water, but so is blood, as they say. I don't want to drown in it, though. Story 3, you get a phone for him? God, my sister muttered, you're so cheap. I said, I'm done, reclaiming my present and leaving. I never imagined having to pick between my sister's family and my financial future, but by morning, my phone was overflowing with texts. However, after serving as their personal ATM for years, I finally reclaimed my life last month. There wasn't a one horrible act or a significant betrayal that marked the breaking point. 10 years of animosity suddenly crystallized in a moment of blatant, arrogant disdain. Morgan is my name. I'm 32, unmarried, childless, and up until recently, I unofficially supported my sister Terry's way of life. With a 16-year-old son named Noah, she is 36 years old. My financial future was almost crushed by a 10-year fantasy that began as occasional assistance for a struggling single mother. However, I eventually lost it when my teenage nephew pitched a fit over receiving a simple iPhone for his birthday rather than a fancy automobile. It began simply enough to become my sister's piggy bank. Terry lost her work when Noah was 6 years old, and for a few months she needed assistance paying the rent. Naturally, I intervened. Noah was a young guy, and she is my sister. 6 months passed. A year passed in 6 months. Before I knew it, I was paying for monthly bills as well as emergencies. Each month, there are expenses of $1,400 for rent, $350 for utilities, $500 for groceries, and $400 for Noah's activities. I put back my own goals, drove a 10-year-old Toyota, and lived in a small one-bedroom flat. Limited retirement funds and no down payment on a home. No far-flung holidays. Just the silent fulfillment that comes from knowing that I was supporting family. That's what I told myself, however, to explain the ongoing drain. Observing Terry's decisions made it worse. When employment were too onerous, she would quit them. She dated males who made no contributions. To make up for the money I provided her, she would return home with expensive bags while I was eating ramen. She sobbed every time I attempted to bring up money, describing how difficult it was to be a single mother, how Noah needed security, and how she was doing her hardest. And the whole affair was made possible by our parents. Morgan, your career is such a blessing. Terry needs further assistance with Noah. He's only a kid. Ignore it. While Terry phoned in sick anytime she wanted to sleep in, I worked 60-hour weeks to advance from entry level to senior management. The expectations were overwhelming. Rent was the only expense at first, followed by utilities, Noah's sporting goods, and braces. After that, it was a modest loan for a down payment on a car. These loans were never paid back. The manipulation of my emotions would begin each time I hesitated. Noah won't have Christmas this year, I suppose. Otherwise, we'll be forced to live in our car. That's okay, though. 3 years ago, I came close to breaking free. I had been saving for months to go to Japan, a place I had longed to see since college. Terry phoned 2 days before to my travel and sobbed about their impending eviction. I gave her $3,000 and canceled my non-refundable vacation. She wanted to de-stress, so she spent the most of my money on a weekend spa vacation with her pals. Later, I found out that the eviction notice was really only a reminder to pay the rent late. But I remained still. Considering that I had already spent $700 in the party, I saved up $1,200 until Noah's 16th birthday to get him the newest iPhone. Terry maintained that without my checkbook, Noah would not have had the venue rental, cuisine, or decorations he desired. He had been making hints about something special for months, so I was thrilled to offer it to him. Noah unwrapped my present as the celebration was in full flow. He held the bright blue apple box for perhaps 2 seconds before a grimace of hatred distorted his face. An iPhone? Really? With utter disdain, he glanced at his buddies before turning back to face me. Jake's birthday present from his parents was a BMW. I assumed you were going to get me a vehicle. What should I do with a second phone? 24 parents and kids gazed at me as the room became quiet and my cheeks heated. But I wasn't broken by Noah's response. After all, he was a teenager. That was the next step, Terry chuckled. In fact, I laughed. So, what did you think he would say? You buy him a phone and earn 6 figures. Sweet 16 is synonymous with an automobile. God, you're so ignorant and cheap. That moment crystallized 10 years of hatred. As memories raced through my head, the room vanished. Terry showcasing her new highlights as I put off costly dental work. I didn't want to destroy the iPad I had scrounged together for him for Christmas, and then dismiss it since Aunt Morgan would simply get me another one. Something cold and heavy gathered in my chest when I told my parents that I couldn't host Thanksgiving because I was taking on more work to pay Terry's property tax bill. My hands ceased to tremble. My mind stopped making noise. I extended my hand and grabbed Noah's iPhone. I guess I'll keep this actually, Noah. You don't seem to need it. I spoke in a steady tone that was nearly unidentifiable to me. And as of right now, I will no longer be providing for you both financially. Terry's chuckle stopped short. What? I heard you. I'm finished. No more cash transfers, no more utilities, and no more rent. Nothing. You're not serious. You are essential to us. Her smugness gave way to terror, and her voice soared upward. For a decade, you have relied on me. Today is the last day of that. After my parents intervened, my mother's face became red with rage. My dad is in astonishment. Mom snarled. You're overreacting, Morgan. It was only a miscommunication. Noah simply felt let down. This has nothing to do with the iPhone, Mom. I've been taken advantage of for around 10 years. 10 years of being unappreciative and giving up my future for those who consider me to be nothing more than an ATM. You dare? Terry's voice was at the shrill tone she always used when she was going to obtain what she wanted. The previous version of myself would have given in and apologized after all I've gone through as a single mother and all the sacrifices I've made. Another check has been written. Rather, I grabbed my handbag and made my way to the door. Take the visitors home. Terry, the party is ended. My sister was yelling that I was wrecking everything as I left the restaurant. I didn't turn around for a change. I got myself a glass of wine, blocked their phones, and did what I had been putting off for 10 years that night. I created a thorough financial strategy for the future. The statistics were nearly magical because of my retirement, my down payment for a house, and the abrupt removal of a $2,650 monthly Terry and Noah shaped hole in my budget. My email was bursting at the seams by morning. My band devices were overflowing with voicemails and texts. In addition to cousins, aunts, family, and friends reminding me how cruel I was and how family should assist family, flying monkeys had been sent out, and Terry and Noah would be destitute without me. I wrote an email ignoring them all. Terry, please use this email as official notice that I will no longer be offering any type of financial assistance. All of the prior financial presents were just that, gifts rather than loans with payback obligations. However, you have said that they were loans when it was convenient for you. To be clear, I will not be covering your rent for July or any future costs. Financial emergencies will not be addressed by me. I refuse to be embarrassed, coerced, or guilted into altering my stance. For a decade, I have provided for you at the expense of my own financial stability. That's over now, Morgan. After sending it, I phoned my bank to stop Terry's accounts from receiving any more automated transactions. I kept records of every loan, gift, and transfer, in case she attempted to legally assert that I owed her anything. After that, I inhaled deeply and made a drastic action. I made an appointment for long overdue treatment. There was nuclear fallout. When Terry's rent was overdue, her landlord gave me a call. It seems that I was unknowingly added as an emergency contact. His number 2 was blocked by me. My parents unexpectedly arrived at my flat. My mom is crying. With disappointment, my father stoned. Morgan, she's going to be kicked out. Do you want your nephew to be homeless like that? With a deliberate touch, Mom's voice cracked on the phrase homeless. If Terry budgets well, she can earn enough to pay her rent, I said coolly. Despite having a career, she prioritizes luxury above necessity. Dad responded, You know it's not that simple. She has always had trouble managing her finances. Yes, as everyone comes running to solve her issues. No more, not by me anyhow. They became furious, but I refused to back down. It was referred to be a healthy limit by my therapist. I referred to it as survival. Terry, Noah, and my parents surprised me at my flat 3 weeks after the birthday catastrophe. The rims of Noah's eyes were crimson. Terry seemed untidy, and my parents had dreadful resolve on their faces. Your actions are ruining this family. As soon as I opened the door, Terry yelled, Noah's activity fees are past due, so his school contacted. Eviction is being threatened by the landlord. All because you choose to undergo a psychotic episode. I maintained my composure. Those are your duties, Terry, not mine. We've always had your assistance. You can't just quit because a foolish birthday present made you feel bad. Noah took a step forward and then lowered his gaze. Aunt Morgan, I apologize about the phone call. I was a jerk. It wasn't my intention. His tone sounded practiced, empty. Noah, this has nothing to do with the phone. This is about all of you taking things for granted for years. My mother then made an attempt, using a kind and cunning tone. Don't take it out on Noah, dear. We know you're sad. He's only a kid. He is 16 months old enough to comprehend that treating others with respect is important, and that money doesn't grow on trees. From there, the discussion took a turn for the worst. Terry threatened to inform my coworkers that I had deserted my family. My father speculated that I could be dealing with mental health problems. They went from threats to pleas and back again when that didn't work. I'd finally had enough. I'll report you to the police for harassment if you don't leave right away. You wouldn't risk it. Terry let out a gasp. I grabbed my phone. Give me a try. The conflict was only getting started when they fled. Terry launched a social media smear campaign, portraying herself as the suffering single mother who was deserted by her cold-hearted sister. The flying monkeys kept texting and calling. My workplace received anonymous ramen noodle gift boxes with notes that said, I thought you might need these since you're so broke you can't help family. I blocked, I documented, and I remained strong and silent. I concentrated on getting better. My life underwent significant and quick adjustments. I could raise my 401k contributions without the ongoing financial burden. I began consulting with a financial advisor. I started looking for a house. The persistent worry about Terry's next problem eventually left my shoulders, and I slept easier. I learned that Terry was at last confronting reality from our common pals. Having her electricity turned off for non-payment was her first wake-up call. Then all of the bills had late fees. When she was unable to pay the costs, Noah was forced to leave his costly travel football team. The most startling of all was that Terry had to work overtime to make ends meet. I got a surprise text from an unknown number in Morgan 3 months after what my therapist and I now refer to as the liberation. It's Noah. A new phone number was obtained. Can we have a conversation? I gave it some thought and decided to get coffee with him. The conceited adolescent from the birthday party wasn't the Noah who arrived. Noah seemed worn out. Simple trousers and a basic t-shirt have taken the place of his fancy clothing. He had his knapsack attached with a name-a-tag from the neighborhood food store. He responded, I got a job, as he followed my eyes to the name-a-tag. I've been employed there for around a month. Even though it's simply returning food in bags, it's something. That's good, I responded in a neutral tone. He began swallowing hard, but I didn't realize it until he stopped. It wasn't until it was gone that I realized how much you'd done for us. I didn't realize you were covering our rent, although Mom always mentioned you occasionally helped out. Are my hobbies, utilities, and anything else. Your mother ought to have told you the truth about our financial circumstances. He stared into his coffee and remarked, She's mad all the time now. Accuses you of being responsible for everything. However, I discovered many shopping bags filled with tags in her closet last week. She purchased it just before my birthday, and it's still on. Costly items while we were barely making ends meet. His eyes were startlingly clear when he glanced up. It dawned on me then that perhaps it wasn't all your fault. We spent an hour talking. Perhaps for the first time, they actually spoke. I found out that Noah willingly left the football squad after realizing the expense. He was saving half of every paycheck for college, and he had sold his game system to pay his expenses. Because he realized now that I wasn't accountable for it, I cautiously reestablished a contact with my nephew, but I declined to return financial support. Every 2 weeks, we got together for coffee. I assisted him with his scholarship study. I gave him budgeting lessons. Thanks to the real world, the entitled child was maturing into a considerate young man. Terry was still a different story. She unexpectedly arrived at my flat 6 months after the liberation. I was instantly on alert since she looked better than the previous time I had seen her have her hair and nails done. When I hesitantly allowed her in, she remarked, "I've been thinking a lot. You might have spoken to me instead of shutting us off entirely, but perhaps I did take advantage of you a bit." No expression of regret or recognition for the years of manipulation. It was only a hint that I had been the one who had been unreasonable. "Terry, I attempted to speak with you for many years. You didn't pay attention. I'm listening now, though." She grinned, that calculating look she knew so well. "Nobody is missing you. Both of us do. We are related, Morgan. We ought to be able to resolve any issue. What specifically do you want to resolve?" I knew the answer when I asked. She was kind enough to appear a little embarrassed. "As you may guess, things have been tight. The growth of Noah's college money isn't happening as it should. He also wants to participate in a program this summer. Excellent for his applications to colleges. But the cost is high." "No," she blinked. "I haven't even mentioned the amount." "How much doesn't matter?" "No," is the response. "I no longer automatically support you or Noah. However, you're doing so well that you wouldn't even notice." "Terry, an apology without action is nothing more than manipulation. You are still the same. You continue to seek out freebies rather than answers." I felt lighter than air, yet she was furious as she left. I had confronted her without losing my composure, without feeling guilty, and without grabbing my wallet. My life has changed drastically in the year since the independence. I've closed on a stunning condominium. I'm seeing steady growth in my retirement savings. The person I'm dating pays his own expenses and respects my limits. Even that trip to Japan has been scheduled by me. At last, Noah is prospering in his own unique manner. He's applying for scholarships, working part-time, and maintaining good grades. He just requested me to assist him in opening his first investing account with his money, and we now have dinner twice a month. The entitled teenager is maturing into an adult. Terry had to move to a smaller home in a less attractive neighborhood after losing her flat. According to Noah, she took on additional shifts at work because she had to. She's still resentful and holds me responsible for all of her financial issues, but she's making it through. That might be the most affectionate thing you can do for someone at times. Allow them to deal with the fallout from their own decisions. My folks are still in the center. Although they no longer openly pressure me, they still think I ought to assist Terry more. In fact, my mother said something that gave me hope last Christmas. Noah appears to be unique, more grown up, perhaps. Perhaps there have been some benefits to the entire scenario. It was the closest thing I was going to come to recognition. The most challenging lesson I've ever learned is that sometimes setting limits with the ones we love, the most may be the most challenging. I believed I was being a nice aunt, sister, helpful, and kind for 10 years. In actuality, I was supporting harmful behaviors that were detrimental to everyone. My financial assistance was not assisting Terry in becoming independent. Noah was being taught that he was entitled to freebies. It was keeping them both from feeling the logical results of their decisions. Saying no is sometimes a necessary part of love. Refusing to save others from their own choices is sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do. I have no idea how my connection with Terry will develop in the future. Maybe one day she will realize that my boundaries are for our mutual safety rather than punishment. Until then, I'll continue to live my life as I see fit, save for my objectives, and provide an example of sound financial management for Noah. After 10 years, the burdens of responsibility and shame have finally been lifted. I'm more than simply financially independent. I am at liberty.